welcome back. Tonight we drift into the deep stillness of the ancient world to discover how the Egyptian pharaohs and the Roman commoners truly surrendered to the night. Forget the modern comforts of memory foam and engineered darkness. Their rest was a world of surprising rituals and bizarre bedding that would feel alien to us today. From the carved stone headrests of the Nile to the crowded, hushed insulae of Rome, we are diving deep into a distant past to uncover the secrets of their slumber, revealing a pursuit of rest that was at once profoundly different and hauntingly familiar. Imagine a world without mattresses, alarm clocks, or even the concept of a quiet night. To the ancient inhabitants of the earth, sleep was not a private luxury tucked away behind soundproof walls. It was a vulnerable transition that connected the human body to the cooling soil and the rising stars. Across every era and every culture, sleep has remained the great universal need. The one moment where the king and the commoner are equally defenseless. Before the first stone was laid for the pyramids, or the first road was paved in Rome, the pursuit of rest was a strategic calculation. It was an act of survival. We often think of our ancestors as living in a state of constant, boring hardship. But their relationship with the night was a sophisticated tapestry of instinct and environment. They did not merely go to bed, they negotiated with the darkness. The fundamental human need for rest is a biological anchor that has never changed, yet the variations in how we achieve it are staggering. As you settle into your own space tonight, consider the profound silence of a pre-industrial world. In the ancient world, the night was not an absence of light, but a presence of its own. It was a thick, heavy blanket that dictated when the work of the hands ended and the work of the mind began. There were no blackout blinds to artificialize the cycle of the sun. Instead, the body followed the rhythmic cooling of the air. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the core temperature of the ancient sleeper would begin to drop in perfect synchronization with the earth. This was the first bedding, the thermal harmony between the skin and the atmosphere. In these earliest days, the bed was a concept rather than a piece of furniture. It began as a depression in the earth, lined with aromatic grasses or soft animal skins to ward off the dampness of the ground. These were not chosen for comfort alone, but for their ability to repel insects and provide a slight barrier against the predators of the night. Sleep was communal. The heat of other bodies was the primary heating system. To sleep alone was to be at risk. Therefore, the ancient soundscape of sleep was a chorus of breathing, the crackle of a dying fire, and the distant calls of the nocturnal wilderness. There was a profound connectedness in this realization that one was a part of the biological machinery of the world, rather than a consumer separated from it by layers of synthetic foam. The evolution of rest is the story of how humanity tried to master the night. As we move from the primitive campfire to the gilded chambers of the pharaohs, we see a shift from survival to symbolism. In Egypt, sleep became an extension of the soul's journey. In Greece, it became a subject of philosophical inquiry. In Rome, it became a reflection of social hierarchy. Yet, beneath these cultural layers, the physical requirement remained unchanged. The brain required the great cleaning that only deep slumber could provide. The ancients understood this instinctively. They did not have the data of modern sleep labs, but they had the wisdom of the senses. They knew that a night of poor rest left the spirit thin and the temper sharp. We often assume that because the ancients lacked our technology, their sleep must have been miserable. This is a significant misconception. while they lacked ergonomic pillows. They lived by the light of the fire and the moon, meaning their bodies produced melatonin in a steady, natural surge as the blue light of the day faded into the orange embers of the evening. Their nights were long, often broken into two sleeps, a first deep rest followed by a period of quiet wakefulness, and then a second slumber. This was the rhythmic pulse of history, a natural Bophosic pattern that allowed for reflection, prayer, and intimacy in the middle of the night. As we prepare to delve into the specific habits of the first great civilizations, take a moment to appreciate the sheer resilience of the human sleeper. We have slept through ice ages, through the rise and fall of empires, and through the transition from stone to steel. Each section of this journey will uncover a new layer of this nocturnal history. We will look at how the elite used sleep to commune with the gods, and how the workers used it to reclaim their strength. We will see how the very structure of a bed could signal a person's place in the universe. The diversity of bedding and the evolution of nocturnal soundscapes reveal a world that was far louder and yet far more peaceful than our own. The secrets of the past are not just boring entries in a dusty ledger. They are practical lessons in how to be human. By unearthing these ancient habits, we find that the pursuit of a good night's sleep is the oldest quest in the world. Whether it was a pharaoh lying on a bed of ebony and gold, or a Roman legionnaire resting his head on a leather pack, the goal was the same: to find that fleeting, weightless moment where the burdens of the day evaporate into the stillness of the dark. The variations we are about to uncover will challenge your ideas of what is normal and perhaps remind you of a simpler, more natural way to close your eyes. The world is quieting now, just as it did 4,000 years ago. The sun has set, the air has cooled, and the great silence has begun to settle over the landscape. You are a part of this long, unbroken chain of sleepers. The worries of the modern world are temporary, but the need for rest is eternal. As we move into the specific nightly rituals of the Egyptians in the next section, let your mind drift away from the present. Imagine the Nile flowing steadily in the distance, the smell of incense in the air, and the feeling of the heavy, warm darkness of the desert night. The journey has begun, and the first stop is the land of the eternal sun, where even sleep was a preparation for immortality. In the land of the Nile, sleep was never a mere biological necessity. It was a sacred bridge between the world of the living and the realm of the divine. To the Egyptian pharaoh, the nightly journey into slumber was a dress rehearsal for the afterlife. As the sun god Ra descended into the underworld each evening to battle the serpent of chaos, the king of Egypt followed a parallel path in his own rest. The pharaoh's bed was not just a place of comfort, it was a ritual platform, often elevated high off the ground to separate the royal body from the mundane dust of the earth. These beds were masterpieces of craftsmanship, carved from ebony, inlaid with ivory, and often featuring the protective legs of lions or bulls to symbolize the strength required to navigate the dream world. As you settle into the steady, unmoving calm of your own bed, imagine the atmosphere of the royal bedchamber in Thebes. The sound was the low, rhythmic chanting of priests in a distant hall and the soft rustle of linen fans. The air was thick with the scent of blue lotus and Kifi incense, designed to thin the veil between the physical and the spiritual. The pharaoh did not rest his head on a soft pillow of feathers. Instead, he used a headrest, a curved pedestal made of wood, stone, or even turquoise. While this sounds uncomfortable to the modern ear, it served a vital purpose. It kept the elaborate royal hairstyle intact and allowed for a cooling airflow around the neck in the sweltering heat of the Egyptian night. More importantly, it was believed to elevate the head toward the heavens, keeping the Ka or soul aligned with the stars. The hidden worries of the Egyptian elite during the night focused on the peril of the unseen. They believed that the dream world was a literal plaza landscape inhabited by gods, ancestors, and demons. A dream was not a random firing of neurons, but a message or a visitation. To prepare for this, the pharaoh's sleep was governed by astronomical alignments. The palace was often designed so that the bed was oriented toward specific constellations, ensuring that as the king slept, he was rhythmically bathed in the celestial energy of the sky. Dream interpretation was a formal science. The House of Life contained scrolls dedicated to deciphering the nightly visions of the king. A dream of a large cat might mean a bountiful harvest, while a dream of losing teeth was a warning of impending strife. For the pharaoh, sleep was a state of active protection. Surrounding the royal bed were amulets of Base, the grotesque but benevolent dwarf god who guarded against nightmares and malevolent spirits. The lion-legged bed itself acted as a talisman, a fortress of rest that ensured the king's soul would return to his body at dawn. This was the peril of the journey, the fear that the soul might wander too far into the duat, the underworld, and become lost. Thus, the rituals of the evening were as complex as the rituals of the day. The pharaoh's body was anointed with oils, and prayers were recited to ensure a safe passage through the 12 hours of the night. Beyond the spiritual, there was a profound aesthetic of rest in the Egyptian court. The linens were of such fineness that they felt like woven air, providing a cooling touch against the skin. The height of the bed allowed for the circulation of air beneath the sleeper, a crucial innovation in a climate where the heat of the day lingered in the stones of the palace long after dark. The pharaoh's sleep was a choreographed event, a moment where the lord of the two lands demonstrated his mastery over even the most vulnerable state of human existence. He slept as a god among men, his rest guarded by the stars and the ancient spells of his ancestors. The contrast between the gilded slumber of the king and the mat of the commoner begins to emerge here, yet both shared a common belief that the night was a time of transformation. Whether on a throne of ebony or a simple reed mat, the Egyptian sleeper was a traveler. They understood that the sun would always rise, and with it the soul would be reborn into a new day. Their fear was not of the dark itself, but of the disharmony that might occur if one did not respect the rituals of the night. Their sleep was a reaffirmation of the at the cosmic order that kept the river flowing and the stars in their places. The palaces are ruins now, and the gilded beds are housed in glass cases, but the rhythm of the Nile remains. The anxieties of the pharaoh, the need for protection, the search for meaning in dreams, and the desire for a cool, elevated rest are the ancient ancestors of our own nightly routines. You are not responsible for the alignment of the stars or the battle against the serpent of chaos. You are only a dweller within the enduring historical peace of the evening. The image of the lion-legged bed, standing firm against the darkness, acts as your guide. The rituals are complete, the amulets are placed, and the palace is stilled by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. While the pharaoh slept on gilded lions, the vast majority of the Egyptian population, the farmers, the builders and the weavers found their rest in a much more grounded fashion. This was the peril of the earthly night, the reality of a life lived in constant contact with the soil. For the commoner, sleep was a communal and practical affair. There were no private chambers or thick walls. Instead, the bedroom was often the roof of a mud brick house or a small, shared corner of a central room. As the intense heat of the day finally broke, the commoners would unroll their beds, simple mats woven from papyrus or dried reeds. These mats were the rhythmic heartbeat of the Egyptian home, easily transported, easily cleaned, and perfectly suited to the environment. As you breathe in the cool, steady air of the present, imagine the atmosphere of a village near Giza 4,000 years ago. The sound was the distant braying of a donkey, the soft lapping of the Nile against the banks, and the communal murmur of families settling down together. The air was filled with the smell of wood smoke and the dry, sweet scent of the desert. For the commoner, sleep was outdoor life. During the hottest months, families would move their reed mats to the flat roofs of their homes to catch the north wind, the cooling breeze that was considered a gift from the gods. This was a world of natural soundscapes, where the transition to sleep was guided by the fading noise of the village and the rising chorus of the river life. The hidden worries of the commoner focused on the peril of the small, while the pharaoh feared demons. The commoner feared scorpions, cobras, and the creeping things of the dust. Their sleep was a state of constant, low-level vigilance. To combat this, they often placed the legs of their simple wooden bed frames, if they had them, in bowls of water to create a moat against insects. If they slept on the floor, they relied on protective magic that was far more accessible than the elaborate spells of the priests. Simple clay amulets of base, the protector of the home, were tucked under the mats. These were the boring but essential tools of survival, the belief that a small, ugly god could keep the darkness safe for a tired laborer. Communal sleeping was the norm, not the exception. A family would sleep in a single row, their mats side by side, providing both warmth in the winter and a sense of shared security year-round. This proximity meant that sleep was never a lonely experience. The breath of a child, the snoring of an elder, and the presence of the family dog were the white noise of the ancient world. They did not seek the perfect silence we crave today. Instead, they sought the comforting noise of the tribe. This communal rest reinforced the social bonds of the village, ensuring that even in the vulnerability of sleep, the individual was part of a larger, resilient whole. The impact of outdoor life on their sleep quality was profound. Because they lived and slept in such close contact with the natural cycles of light, their bodies were perfectly synchronized with the sun. They rose at the first gray light of dawn, not to an alarm, but to the natural opening of the day. Their sleep was deep and restorative, because it was earned through physical labor and guided by the cooling of the earth. They did not suffer from the blue light of screens. Their only light after sunset was the orange glow of a small oil lamp or the silver light of the moon. This was a clean sleep, stripped of the anxieties of the modern clock and focused entirely on the recovery of the body. The commoner's sleep also had a spiritual dimension, though it was less formal than the pharaoh's. They believed that Base watched over their children and that the ancestors might visit them in their dreams to offer advice or warnings. Their preparation for the afterlife was woven into their daily rest. They saw sleep as a small death and waking as a small rebirth. They used simple headrests made of wood or clay, mirroring the royal style, but without the gilding. These objects were so central to their identity that they were often buried with them, ensuring that even in the eternal sleep of the tomb, the head was supported and the soul was ready to rise. The mud brick houses have long since returned to the earth, but the simplicity of the mat remains a powerful lesson in rest. The commoner's night was not defined by what they lacked, but by what they had: a connection to their family, a breeze from the river, and a deep harmony with the world around them. You are not responsible for the dangers of the dust or the protection of the village. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet simplicity of the night. The image of the unrolled mat on a moonlit roof acts as your guide. The work is done, the breeze is cool, and the village is stilled by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. Section 4: The Spiritual Mirror, Sleep, and the Afterlife to the Ancient Egyptians. The boundary between sleep and death was so thin as to be almost invisible. They viewed the nightly act of closing one's eyes as a spiritual mirror, a reflection of the great journey that every soul would eventually take into the West. This was not a source of morbid fear, but a profound framework for understanding the rhythm of existence. They believed that during sleep, the Ba, the personality or soul, could leave the body and travel through the physical and spiritual worlds, gathering wisdom and interacting with the divine. Thus, the sleep of the night was a vital preparation for the sleep of eternity. This belief transformed the bedroom from a place of mere physical recovery into a laboratory of the spirit. As you drift further into the weightless, calm expanse of the night, imagine the profound quiet of an Egyptian tomb. To the ancients, the tomb was the house of eternity, and its center was the sarcophagus, the ultimate bed. The rituals they performed for the living sleeper were mirrored in the rituals for the dead. The mummy was placed on its side, often with a headrest to keep the head elevated, symbolizing the hope that the deceased would wake up in the field of reeds. They harbored a secret worry that if the body was not positioned correctly, or if the proper amulets were not present, the soul would be trapped in the darkness. This was the peril of the transition, the fear that the rhythm of rebirth could be broken by neglect. The preparation for this spiritual journey began long before the eyes were closed. In the evening, the Egyptian would often recite the spell for not dying a second time, or the spell for waking in peace. They viewed the state of dreamless sleep as a moment of pure communion with the Creator, a time when the self dissolved back into the primordial waters of none. Their hidden worries focused on the peril of the unready soul. They believed that if one went to sleep with an angry heart or a troubled conscience, the Ba would be vulnerable to the eaters of the soul that prowled the night. To the Egyptians, a good night's sleep was a moral achievement, a sign that one was in harmony with the Mata, the cosmic truth. This spiritual focus had a practical impact on their sleep habits. They avoided heavy meals or excessive noise before rest, not for health reasons, but to ensure that the channels of the spirit remained clear. They used specific scents like frankincense and myrrh to purify the air for the soul's journey. The rhythmic breathing of the sleeper was seen as the wind of the gods moving through the body. They envisioned a future where the act of waking was a literal triumph over the forces of non-existence. This was the peril of the shadow, the fear that the night was a battleground where the light of the consciousness had to be defended by faith and ritual. The role of dreams in this spiritual framework was paramount. They believed that the gods used the dream state to communicate their will, offer warnings, or provide glimpses of the afterlife. For the commoner, a dream of a deceased parent was not a memory, but a real visitation. For the pharaoh, a dream was a divine command. This meant that the nocturnal world was just as important as the diurnal world. They did not dismiss dreams as boring fantasies. They archived them, studied them, and lived by them. This created a culture of high-stakes rest, where the quality of one's sleep could dictate the direction of one's life. The contrast between the modern view of sleep as waste and the ancient view of sleep as work is a testament to their spiritual depth. They did not lose time when they slept. They gained access to a higher reality. They used their rituals, the washing of the feet, the lighting of the lamp, the reciting of the spells, a way to anchor themselves in the sacred. Their fear was that a spiritually empty sleep was a wasted opportunity for growth. They understood that to sleep is to learn how to live, a philosophy that made every night a profound act of dedication to the soul. The temples and the tombs remain as silent witnesses to this ancient wisdom. The belief that sleep is a sacred journey offers a sense of profound, protective gravity. You are not just a body resting. You are a consciousness in transition. You are not responsible for the battles of the soul or the deciphering of the divine will. You are only a passenger on the long, steady river of the night. The image of the bay bird returning to the body at dawn acts as your guide. The journey is safe, the protection is absolute, and the shadows are stilled by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. Section 5. The Philosophic Pillow, Greek Rest and Reason in the Sunlight-Drenched City-States of Ancient Greece. Sleep underwent a radical transformation from a purely mystical journey into a subject of intense intellectual inquiry. For the Greek citizen, the night was not just a time to hide from the dark, but a space to be analyzed by the light of reason. The Greeks were among the first to move beyond seeing sleep as a divine gift or a demonic threat. Instead, viewing it as a physical state governed by the balance of the body's internal systems. This was the anxiety of the biological machine, a new concern that the quality of one's rest was a direct reflection of one's lifestyle, diet, and mental discipline. As the evening shadows lengthened across the marble porticos of Athens, the transition to rest was guided by a sophisticated understanding of the golden mean. As you settle into the steady, unmoving comfort of your own space, imagine the atmosphere of a Greek home in the 5th century BCE. The sound was the low, persistent hum of the Mediterranean wind through the olive groves and the distant, muffled conversation of the evening meal. The air was clear and cooling, carrying the faint scent of pine resin and sea salt. For the Athenian, sleep was an extension of the virtuous life. They did not view rest as a passive escape. They saw it as a necessary reset for the mind. Philosophers like Aristotle and Plato spent hours debating the nature of dreams and the mechanics of slumber, wondering if the soul remained active while the body lay dormant. They harbored a secret worry that too much sleep would lead to a softening of the character, while too little would shatter the clarity of the intellect. The Greeks introduced a unique architecture of the evening through the symposium, the drinking party, that often preceded rest. However, this was not merely a celebration. It was a carefully structured social ritual. The couches used for dining, known as clini, were the same pieces of furniture used for sleep. These were elegant, hub-backed wooden frames, topped with mattresses stuffed with wool or linen. As the wine flowed and the philosophy deepened, the transition from active thought to passive rest happened in the same physical space. This created a culture where the boundary between social life and private slumber was incredibly fluid. The Greek sleeper did not go to bed in the modern sense. They moved into a state of repose that was often shared with friends and intellectual peers. The hidden worries of the Greek elite focused on the peril of the imbalance. They believed in the four humors: blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They were convinced that sleep was the time when these fluids recentered themselves. If a man's inner heat was too high, his sleep would be agitated and filled with fiery dreams. To manage this, they practiced a form of sleep hygiene that feels surprisingly modern. They favored light evening meals of olives, cheese, and diluted wine, believing that a heavy stomach would cloud the senses and invite nightmares. They envisioned a future where the disciplined man could control even his subconscious, using the quiet of the night to organize his thoughts for the coming day's debates in the agora. For the Greek soldier or the traveler, sleep was a matter of tactical discipline. In the barracks of Sparta or the camps of a marching phalanx, rest was stripped of its philosophical flourishes and reduced to a hard, essential recovery. A soldier's bed was often nothing more than a heap of rushes or a leather cloak spread over the earth. Yet, even here, there was a belief in the sacredness of the watch. They understood that the safety of the state depended on the alertness of the sleeper. This created a culture of high vigilance rest, where the ears remained tuned to the environment even as the eyes were closed. They feared the lethargy of the camp, knowing that a lapse in the discipline of the night could lead to disaster at dawn. The contrast between the inquiry of the scholar and the rest of the laborer highlights the Greek obsession with the mind-body connection. While the laborers and slaves found their rest on simple mats of straw, the intellectuals were developing the first dream sanctuaries. In the temples of Asclepius, the god of healing, the sick would practice incubation. They would sleep on the temple floor, hoping that the god would visit them in a dream to offer a cure. This was a sophisticated blend of medicine and faith, where the dream state was used as a diagnostic tool. They did not dismiss the night as a void. They used it as a theater for healing, believing that the silent voice of the body was loudest when the world was quiet. The influence of these ideas on modern sleep cannot be overstated. The Greeks gave us the word hypnos for the god of sleep and oneros for the dream, framing rest as a powerful, personified force. They understood that rest is the spice of labor, a philosophy that balanced the intense competitive energy of their culture with a deep respect for the recovery of the self. Their fear was not of the dark, but of a life without reflection, even in the hours of the night. They used their simple tools, the wool-stuffed mattress, the olive oil lamp, and the light evening meal, to create a sanctuary for the intellect. The academies and the gymnasiums are silent now, but the logic of the pillow remains. The Greek belief that sleep is a pillar of health and virtue offers a sense of protective, intellectual clarity. You are not responsible for the balance of your humors or the decoding of a divine message. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet history of the evening. The image of the philosopher at rest, his mind finally still after a day of inquiry, acts as your guide. The debates are over, the city is peaceful, and the agora is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. As the center of the world shifted to Rome, the pursuit of sleep became a chaotic struggle against the noise and density of the first true metropolis. For the Roman commoner, living in the insolent, towering, overcrowded apartment blocks of the city rest was a fragile commodity. This was the anxiety of the urban night, a collective dread that the city never truly slept, even if its inhabitants desperately needed to. Unlike the quiet roofs of Egypt or the olive groves of Greece, the Roman night was a cacophony of iron-rimmed cartwheels on cobblestones, the shouting of night watchmen, and the constant, terrifying threat of fire. To sleep in Rome was to perform an act of defiant endurance against the overwhelming energy of the empire. As you settle into the weightless.com expanse of the evening, imagine the atmosphere of a third-floor apartment near the Suburra. The sound was the persistent clatter and bang of a city that was legally forbidden from moving freight during the day, because the narrow streets were too crowded for heavy wagons in the sunlight. The Roman quiet hours were actually the loudest time of the 24-hour cycle. The air was thick with the smell of charcoal smoke, street food, and the dampness of the Tiber. The Roman commoner did not have a bedroom. They had a cubiculum, a tiny, windowless cell, barely large enough for a simple wooden bedframe. They harbored a secret worry that the flimsy walls of the insulae would collapse, or that a neighbor's tipped lamp would turn their home into an inferno before they could wake. The bedding of the Roman masses was a study in practical necessity. While the wealthy enjoyed mattresses, stuffed with swan feathers and draped in Tyrian purple silk, the commoner relied on sacks filled with hay, straw, or even dried seaweed. These mattresses were often infested with pests, making sleep a battle for physical comfort as much as mental peace. To cope with this, the Romans developed a culture of communal relaxation. The public baths were not just for hygiene, they were the primary pre-sleep ritual for the entire city. After a day of toil, the Roman would move through the hot, warm, and cold rooms of the baths, allowing the hydrotherapy to release the tension of the body before returning to their crowded cell. They understood that the body needed a transition, a cooling down period, before it could find rest in the noise of the city. The hidden worries of the Roman elite, however, were of a different nature. For the senator or the wealthy merchant, sleep was a peril of the political. In a world of assassinations and shifting alliances, the bedroom was the most vulnerable place a man could be. Their private chambers were guarded by trusted slaves known as cubiculari, whose sole job was to ensure that the silence of the night was not broken by a dagger. They envisioned a future where their enemies would use the cover of darkness to strike, turning the state of rest into a trap. This led to a culture of isolated sleep, where the wealthy withdrew behind thick stone walls and heavy curtains, creating a sanctuary of silence that was a luxury only the most powerful could afford. Military sleep disciplines in Rome were the most rigorous in the ancient world. For the legionnaire, sleep was a weapon of the state. On the march, they constructed a fortified camp every single night, ensuring that even in the most hostile territory, the rhythm of the legion remained unbroken. A soldier's bed was a leather tent shared with 8 other men, his head resting on his wooden shield. They practiced shift sleeping, with sentries rotating every 3 hours to ensure the grip of the empire never slackened. They feared the softness of the garrison, believing that too much comfort would dull the edge of the sword. This created a generation of men who could sleep anywhere, at any time, anchored by the disciplined breathing of their comrades.
The contrast between the roar of the city and the silence of the villa defines the Roman experience. while the poor struggled to find a moment of peace in the concrete jungle of the insulae. The rich retreated to their country estates, the villas, to seek otium or productive leisure. In these villas, sleep was returned to its natural state, guided by the sound of falling water in the peristyle gardens and the scent of jasmine. They used their wealth to buy back the night, creating artificial environments of peace that mirrored the quiet of the lost Greek past. They understood that the power to sleep was the ultimate mark of status in a world that was increasingly loud and hurried. The empire has fallen, and the carts no longer rattle over the Appian Way. But the Roman struggle for rest remains a familiar story. The anxiety of the urban dweller, the noise of the neighbors, the fear of the environment, and the need for a ritual transition are the direct ancestors of our own modern lives. You are not responsible for the safety of the city or the guarding of the palace. You are only a dweller within the enduring historical peace of the night. The image of the warm baths washing away the dust of the day acts as your guide. The gates are closed, the watch is set, and the forum is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. To understand how ancient civilizations truly slept, we must recreate the nocturnal soundscape, the specific collection of noises that define their nights. We often imagine the past as a place of absolute dead silence, but this is a significant misconception. The ancient night was a rich, textured experience, filled with sounds that have been entirely erased by the hum of electricity and the drone of the internal combustion engine. This was the anxiety of the acoustic environment, the realization that the human ear is never truly off, and that the mind uses the background noise of the night to gauge the safety of the surroundings. For the ancient sleeper, the silence was not an absence of sound, but a balance of nature. As you settle into the profound, absolute stillness of the evening, consider the absence of the hum. In the modern world, we are surrounded by a constant, low-frequency vibration from appliances, power lines, and distant traffic. In the ancient world, the baseline was the sound of the earth. In Egypt, it was the persistent, low-volume hiss of the desert wind over sand. In Rome, it was the clicking of insects and the echoing of water in stone conduits. These sounds were not distractions. They were auditory anchors that signaled a stable environment. The ancient sleeper was attuned to the rhythm of the natural, where a sudden break in the insect chorus or a sharp, discordant snap of a branch was a signal of immediate danger. The communal noise of the ancient world was another defining factor, because most people lived in close quarters, whether in a shared mud brick room, a Greek symposium hall, or a Roman apartment. Sleep was a shared acoustic space. The sound of breathing, the shifting of straw mattresses, and the occasional murmur of a dreamer were the human white noise of history. They did not have the luxury of white noise machines. They had the actual presence of their community. This created a sense of auditory security, where the presence of others was a constant, subconscious reassurance. They harbored a secret worry about absolute silence, viewing it as a sign of isolation or a vacuum where the divine or the demonic might enter. The absence of artificial light had a profound impact on the depth of the soundscape. In a world where the eyes could see very little after sunset, the ears became hypersensitive. The ancient night was filled with microsounds, the flutter of an owl's wing, the cooling of stones as they contracted, the distant drip of an oil lamp. These sounds were the clocks of the night, allowing the sleeper to track the passage of time without ever opening their eyes. They knew the sound of the third watch or the voice of the pre-dawn wind. This was a temporal harmony that we have lost, replaced by the digital glow of the bedside clock. The transition from the natural soundscape to the artificial soundscape is the story of how we detached ourselves from the earth. The ancients feared the unnatural noise, the sound of a stranger's footstep on stone or the metallic ring of a weapon. Today we fear the sudden silence of a power outage. By recreating these ancient sounds in our minds, we can tap into a deeper, more primal sense of rest. We can realize that the peace we seek is not the elimination of all sound, but the presence of the right sounds, the ones that tell our nervous system that the world is in order and the watch is being kept by others. The sound of the past is a lost music, a symphony of natural and communal elements that guided 100 generations into slumber. The belief that we are safe in the sound offers a sense of protective, grounded comfort. You are not responsible for monitoring the night or interpreting the voices of the wind. You are only a listener to the enduring, quiet history of the world. The image of the distant fire crackling in the dark acts as your guide. The world is in order, the environment is stable, and the wilderness is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. The history of the bed is the history of human ingenuity applied to the most vulnerable third of our lives. From the simple reed mat to the ornate Roman lectus, the materials we chose to sleep on tell the story of our relationship with the earth and our social standing. This was the anxiety of the surface, a constant search for a material that could provide both warmth and protection, while remaining clean in a world where pests were a constant threat. The evolution of bedding was not just about comfort in the modern sense. It was about insulation and elevated safety. As civilization progressed, the bed moved from the horizontal plane of the ground to the vertical plane of the furniture, reflecting a desire to rise above the mundane. As you drift further into the calm, weightless expanse of the night, imagine the texture of a Greek mattress. It was a linen sack filled with raw wool, heavy, dense, and possessed of a natural lanolin scent that was believed to be soothing. The Romans, always the engineers, improved on this by using feathers or even down for the wealthy, creating the first truly soft beds in history. They harbored a secret worry about the cold from below, knowing that the stone floors of their villas would leach the heat from a human body in a single night. This led to the development of the bed frame, a wooden or bronze structure that used leather straps or woven cords to suspend the mattress, creating an air cushion that provided the first true insulation in history. The materials of the night also served a spiritual purpose. In Egypt, the use of ebony and ivory was not just for show. These materials were believed to possess protective frequencies that warded off evil. In the medieval world that followed, the use of aromatic herbs like lavender or wormwood inside the mattress was a form of chemical defense against both insects and bad air. They envisioned a future where the bed was a fortress of health, a place where the materials themselves worked to heal the body as it slept. This was a holistic bedding philosophy that we are only now beginning to rediscover with organic materials and natural fibers. The bedding of the soldier was perhaps the most influential material of all. The Roman leather cloak, or pienula, was the ancestor of the modern sleeping bag. It was waterproof, durable, and could be rolled up in seconds. This mobile bedding allowed for the expansion of empires, ensuring that the night was never a barrier to progress. They understood that the material of the night was a tool of war as much as the sword. A cold soldier was a slow soldier, and a slow soldier was a dead one. Thus, the history of the bed is also the history of thermal victory, the ability of humans to sleep comfortably in environments that should have killed them.
The transition from natural materials to synthetic materials is a very recent chapter in our story. For thousands of years, every human slept on something that had once been a live grass, wool, feathers, or leather. This created a biological connection to the bed that we have largely lost. By imagining the breathable nature of ancient bedding, we can find a sense of physical, grounded peace. We can realize that our need for a soft surface is a deep, ancient instinct, born from the thousands of years our ancestors spent trying to soften the hard reality of the ground. The materials of the past have returned to the earth, but the instinct for the nest remains. The belief that the surface of the night should be a place of protection and comfort offers a sense of profound physical security. You are not responsible for the engineering of your rest or the defense against the elements. You are only a recipient of the enduring, quiet comfort of the evening. The image of the woven cords of a Roman bed holding you safely above the floor acts as your guide. The frame is strong, the materials are soft, and the earth is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In our modern world of perpetual illumination, we have largely forgotten the circadian gate, the natural, physiological threshold that our ancestors crossed every evening with effortless grace. This was the anxiety of the lost rhythm, a quiet realization that the body is not a machine that can be toggled on and off, but a biological clock tuned to the rotation of the planet. The ancients, from the Nile Delta to the hills of Rome, did not fight against their tiredness. They treated it as a sacred signal. They understood that the wisdom of the night was found in the surrender to the dimming light. As we look back at their habits, we find a profound lesson in environmental alignment that could serve as a cure for the restless, overstimulated minds of the 21st century. As you settle into the weightless, calm expanse of the present, imagine the quality of light in a world before the light bulb. The sound was the crackle of a single oil lamp and the deep, heavy silence of the surrounding darkness. The air was not pierced by the blue-white glare of screens, but softened by the amber and orange hues of fire. This was the first lesson of ancient wisdom, the orange twilight. The ancients lived in a world where the spectrum of light shifted naturally from the invigorating blue of the morning sun to the sedative orange of the evening hearth. This shift triggered a cascade of natural chemistry in the brain, a pre-sleep preparation that allowed them to drift into slumber without the struggle we often face today. They harbored a secret worry about false light, viewing the moon's brightness as a time for activity and the total dark. The second lesson from the past is the lesson of the thermal dip. Ancient sleepers lived in structures that were not climate-controlled to a single, static temperature. They experienced the rhythm of the cooling earth. As the sun vanished, the stone walls of their homes, or the mud bricks of their huts, would slowly release their heat, creating a natural drop in ambient temperature that perfectly mirrored the body's internal need to cool down for deep sleep. They did not try to keep their bedrooms at a constant warmth. They embraced the night chill, using heavy wools or linens to create a microclimate around their bodies while breathing in the crisp, cold air of the room. This thermal contrast was a powerful biological trigger for the onset of rest, a biological key that we often lose by keeping our modern homes too warm throughout the night. The third lesson is the wisdom of the biphasic pulse. Historical records suggest that for much of human history, sleep was not one solid 8-hour block, but 2 sleeps. People would go to bed shortly after dusk, sleep for 4 hours, and then wake for a period of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. This was not viewed as insomnia. It was a cherished time for reflection, prayer, intimate conversation, or even creative thought. They would then return for a second sleep that lasted until dawn. This ancient pattern suggests that our modern anxiety over waking up at 3 a.m. is a misplaced fear. To the ancients, that middle-of-the-night wakefulness was a spiritual clearing, a time when the mind was at its most peaceful and the world was at its most still. The hidden worries of the modern sleeper often focus on efficiency, but the ancient wisdom teaches the peril of the hurried mind. The Greeks and Romans did not view sleep as a lost opportunity for productivity. They viewed it as the foundation of virtue. They understood that a man who did not respect the night could not lead in the day. Their boring rituals, the washing of the feet in cool water, the slow recitation of poetry, or the simple act of watching the stars, were not wastes of time. They were decompression chambers that allowed the nervous system to transition from the high vigilance of survival to the low vigilance of recovery. They envisioned a life where the active and passive states were in perfect, alternating balance. The fourth lesson is the lesson of the minimalist nest. Ancient bedding was simple, functional, and devoid of the clutter of the modern life. The cubiculum of a Roman was a space for nothing but sleep. There were no desks, no books, and no distractions. This created a strong psychological association between the space and the act of resting. When a Roman entered his cell, his brain knew exactly what was required of it. This spatial purity is something we have lost as our bedrooms have become offices, entertainment centers, and social hubs. The ancient wisdom suggests that by stripping back our environments, we can reclaim the sanctity of the nest, turning our beds back into the fortresses of recovery they were meant to be. The final lesson is the acceptance of the dark. In the ancient world, the night was a time when the eyes rested and the ears listened. They did not fear the darkness. They respected it as a necessary void where the world could regenerate. They understood that without the night there is no morning, a philosophy that turned the act of closing one's eyes into a gesture of faith in the continuity of the universe. Their fear was not of the shadows, but of a life that was all light and no shadow, a state of permanent exhaustion and spiritual drought. By embracing the darkness of the past, we can find a sense of profound ancestral peace in our own rooms tonight. The empires have turned to dust, and the oil lamps have long been extinguished, but the wisdom of the body remains unchanged. The ancient lessons of light, temperature, and spiritual surrender offer a sense of protective, grounded clarity. You are not responsible for the demands of the modern clock or the pressure to be perpetually productive. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet history of human rest. The image of the cooling hearth and the first sleep acts as your guide. The rhythm is restored, the environment is aligned, and the modern world is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. As we transition back into the specific history of the Nile, we must explore a unique phenomenon, the dream sanctuaries or incubation temples. These were the first dedicated sleep clinics in history, places where the boundaries between medicine, psychology, and religion were entirely erased. For the Egyptian seeking a cure for an ailment or an answer to a life-shaping question, the solution was not a pill, but a sacred sleep. This was the anxiety of the unspoken wound, the belief that the body's physical problems often had spiritual roots that could only be accessed when the conscious mind was set aside. To enter a dream sanctuary was to undergo a controlled surrender to the power of the subconscious. As you breathe in the cool, steady air of the evening, imagine the atmosphere of a temple dedicated to Imhotep or Serapis. The sound was the low, persistent drip-drip of a water clock and the soft, echoing footsteps of a priest in the outer court. The air was heavy with the scent of dream-inducing herbs and the cool, damp smell of stone. The seeker would prepare for days through fasting and purification, moving into a state of heightened receptivity. They did not just lie down to sleep. They entered a soporific ritual. They would be led into a small, dark chamber, a sanctuary of the night, where they would sleep on a consecrated mat, hoping for a divine visitation. The hidden worries of the seeker focused on the peril of the silent god. They feared that they might sleep and see nothing, or worse, that they might see a false vision sent by a chaotic spirit. To prevent this, the priests acted as nocturnal guides, interpreting the dreams as the seekers woke. This created a culture of collaborative dreaming, where the night was a shared journey between the dreamer and the interpreter. They believed that during this temple sleep, the gods would literally touch the body, repairing what was broken or speaking words of power into the ear of the soul. This was the peril of the ear, the fear that the message might be heard but misunderstood, leading to a life lived in error. The design of these sanctuaries was a masterpiece of sensory deprivation. The rooms were windowless, silent, and kept at a constant, cool temperature. They understood, thousands of years before modern science, that deep rest requires the removal of external stimuli. By creating a void of light and sound, they forced the mind to turn inward, creating the vivid internal theater necessary for prophetic dreaming. They envisioned a future where the night was the true doctor and the dream was the true prescription. This was a systemic wisdom, the fear that waking medicine was only a surface treatment and that the real healing happened in the underworld of the mind. For the common Egyptian, the dream sanctuary was a place of ultimate hope. It was the one place where their personal fame or wealth didn't matter. The gods spoke to the beggar just as clearly as the prince. This democratization of the night reinforced the idea that sleep was the great equalizer. Their private notes recorded on astraca or papyrus reveal an anxiety about mental clarity. They used the temple sleep to find mahat or balance in their lives, seeking a rhythmic alignment with the cosmos. They feared a scattered mind more than a broken bone, believing that a person without a clear dream was like a ship without a rudder on the Nile. The contrast between the clinical sleep of today and the sacred sleep of the temple highlights our loss of the wonder of the night. We go to sleep clinics to measure oxygen and brain waves. They went to sanctuaries to find meaning and miracles. Yet, the physical environment they created, the dark, the cool, and the quiet, is exactly what we still strive for today. They understood that sleep is the womb of the future, a state where the next version of the self is formed. Their fear was not of the darkness, but of the spiritual deafness that occurred when one forgot how to listen to the silence. The temples are in ruins, and the water clocks have long since run dry, but the power of the quiet chamber remains. The Egyptian belief that the night is a place of profound healing and internal discovery offers a sense of protective, spiritual gravity. You are not responsible for decoding your visions or seeking a divine cure. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet sanctuary of the evening. The image of the cool stone chamber, standing firm against the noise of the world, acts as your guide. The preparation is done, the sanctuary is ready, and the temple is stilled by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. For the Roman elite, the ultimate achievement was the pursuit of asiama refined, productive leisure that was the polar opposite of negnusium, or the business of the city. The Roman villa was the physical manifestation of this ideal, a sanctuary designed specifically for the mastery of time and the perfection of rest. While the commoner in the insulae fought for a moment of quiet, the wealthy Roman architecturally manufactured peace. This was the anxiety of the souls, fatigue, the fear that the constant pressure of Roman politics and expansion would dry out the spirit, requiring a seasonal retreat to the countryside to rehydrate the mind through sleep and silence. As you settle into the steady, unhurried calm of the present, imagine the atmosphere of a villa in Tuscany or on the coast of Bai. The sound was the gentle plinking of a fountain in the central atrium and the soft, distant murmur of the sea or the wind through the pines. The air was cool and scented with rosemary and lavender, specifically chosen for their calming properties. The Roman bedroom, or cubiculum, in a villa was a masterpiece of acoustic engineering. It was often placed at the far end of the garden, separated from the kitchens and the slave quarters by thick, sound-dampening walls. They harbored a secret worry about intrusive thought, believing that the sound of a human voice could shatter the crystal of a dream. The bed in a wealthy Roman villa was known as the lectus, and it was far more than a place to lie down. It was often made of precious woods like citrus or maple, inlaid with tortoiseshell and silver, and featured a headboard designed to protect the sleeper from bad drafts. The mattress was filled with swan's down or the finest wool from Miletus, creating a cloud-like surface that was the height of ancient luxury. They used double-layered curtains made of Egyptian linen to block out even the slightest sliver of morning light, allowing the sleeper to dictate the dawn. This was the peril of the sun, the fear that the natural world would impose its boring schedule on the refined master of the villa. The hidden worries of the villa owner focused on the peril of the soft life while they craved comfort. They also feared that too much otium would turn them into Greeks, a Roman slur for those they considered intellectually brilliant but physically and morally weak. To counter this, their rest was often structured. They would wake early for a walk in the gardens, take a meridiatio, a midday nap during the heat of the day, and then retire early for a long philosophic sleep. This polyphasic pattern allowed them to maintain a state of perpetual mental freshness. They envisioned a life where the rhythm of the day was a work of art, with sleep serving as the canvas upon which the rest of the life was painted. The villa also served as a sanctuary from the political. In the city, the Roman aristocrat was never truly alone. He was surrounded by clients, rivals, and spies. In the villa, the peace of the night was a form of political protection. They believed that a man who sleeps well thinks clearly, and that the clarity found in the Tuscan hills would allow them to outmaneuver their enemies back in the Forum. This was a strategic rest, the belief that the quiet of the night was the secret weapon of the successful statesman. Their private letters, like those of Pliny the Younger, are filled with descriptions of the deep, profound silence of their country estates, treating quiet as a rare and precious commodity that had to be defended at all costs. The contrast between the forced labor of the poor and the curated leisure of the rich is a stark reminder of the social divisions of Rome. Yet, the villa owner's obsession with acoustic peace and thermal comfort laid the groundwork for our modern ideas of the master bedroom. They understood that sleep is the only true privacy, the one place where even an emperor could be just a man. Their fear was that without this quiet center, the external world would eventually consume the internal self. They used their wealth to build walls against the noise of history, creating a temporal bubble where the only thing that mattered was the steady breathing of the sleeper. The villas are ruins now, and the fountains have been silent for centuries, but the desire for the quiet retreat remains. The Roman belief that we must manufacture our own peace offers a sense of protective, architectural comfort. You are not responsible for the politics of the state or the defense of your reputation. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet sanctuary of your own villa of the mind. The image of the shaded garden and the silent room acts as your guide. The city is distant, the garden is peaceful, and the empire is hustled by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. For the Roman legionnaire, sleep was not a luxury or a spiritual journey. It was a calculated resource. In the barracks of the frontier or the temporary camps of a campaign, rest was the fuel that kept the Roman war machine in motion. This was the anxiety of the unseen enemy, the constant, high-alert realization that the night was when the barbarian was most likely to strike. The Roman camp was a masterpiece of psychological security, a standardized, fortified square that looked exactly the same whether it was built in the deserts of Judea or the forests of Germany. This spatial consistency allowed the soldier to find rest in an environment of extreme peril, knowing that his world was ordered even in the dark. As you drift further into the calm, weightless expanse of the night, imagine the atmosphere of a Roman camp along the Rhine. The sound was the rhythmic clank-clank of the sentry's armor as he walked the ramparts, and the distant, low crackle of the watchfires. The air was cold and filled with the scent of leather, pine smoke, and damp earth. The legionnaire did not have a bed. He had a papilio, a leather tent shared with 7 other men of his contubernium. They slept shoulder to shoulder on the hard ground, their bodies providing a communal warmth that was essential for survival. They harbored a secret worry about the sleep of the sentinel, knowing that if a single man fell asleep on watch, the entire sentry would pay the price in blood. The equipment of the night was just as important as the equipment of the day. The soldier's pillow was his loculus, a leather satchel filled with his personal rations and tools. His mattress was his heavy wool cloak, the sagum, which served as both a uniform and a blanket. This dual-purpose bedding was a sign of the Roman commitment to efficiency. They understood that the soldier is his own home, a philosophy that allowed the legions to move with a speed and flexibility that terrified their enemies. They envisioned a world where the Roman peace was maintained by men who could find deep, restorative sleep on a pile of stones, as long as the order of the camp was maintained. The hidden worries of the Roman soldier focused on the peril of the sudden wake. They were trained to move from deep slumber to full battle readiness in a matter of seconds. This required a unique mental conditioning, a state of semi-earth rest, where the brain remained tuned to the specific sound of the trumpet or the shout of the centurion. This high-tension sleep was the boring but vital reality of life on the frontier. They feared the softness of the hearth, believing that a man who became too accustomed to a real bed would lose his warrior's edge. To the legionnaire, the hard ground was a reminder of his duty and his strength. The rhythm of the watch was the primary timekeeper of the Roman night. The night was divided into 4 vigils, each marked by a change of the guard. This structured sleep meant that the soldier's rest was often interrupted, leading to a natural polyphasic pattern. They would sleep for a few hours, serve their watch, and then return to sleep. This interrupted rest was not seen as a deficit, but as a constant state of readiness. It reinforced the communal nature of the legion. You slept because your brother was awake, and you stayed awake so that your brother could sleep. This mutual trust was the true foundation of Roman power, the belief that the watch was never truly broken. The contrast between the chaos of the frontier and the order of the camp highlights the Roman genius for organization. They took the most vulnerable state of humanity's, sleep, and turned it into a defensive formation. Their fear was not of the wilderness itself, but of the internal collapse that occurred when discipline failed. They used their boring routines, the digging of the trench, the setting of the watch, the cleaning of the gears, a way to create a sanctuary of order in a world of uncertainty. The camps are now just faint outlines in the grass, and the legions have long since marched into history. but the discipline of the night remains. The Roman belief that order is the parent of rest offers a sense of protective, structural clarity. You are not responsible for the safety of the frontier or the standing of the watch. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet order of the evening. The image of the fortified camp standing firm against the dark acts as your guide. The watch is set, the fire is low, and the wilderness is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. The evolution of the bed as a physical object is the story of humanity's vertical ascent, the slow, deliberate move from the horizontal plane of the earth to the elevated status of furniture. In the ancient world, the distance between your body and the floor was a precise measurement of your power, your wealth, and your perceived closeness to the divine. This was the anxiety of the lowly, a silent understanding that to sleep on the ground was to be part of the dust, while to sleep on a raised frame was to be a master of the environment. As civilization moved from the nomadic tent to the stone city, the bed transformed from a temporary mat into a permanent, boring, but essential monument to human achievement. As you settle into the steady, unmoving comfort of your own bed tonight, imagine the profound shift in perspective that came with the first raised beds. The sound was the rhythmic creak of timber and the soft rustle of fresh straw within a linen sack. The air, even just a few feet off the floor, was measurably cleaner and warmer, away from the dampness and the crawling things that inhabited the lower world. For the wealthy of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Rome, the bed frame was a statement of thermal and biological victory. They harbored a secret worry that the chill of the stone would leach the vitality from their bones, leading to a life of physical weakness and spiritual decay. By lifting themselves toward the ceiling, they were literally and figuratively rising above the struggles of the common man. The hidden worries of the craftsmen who built these beds focused on the peril of the unstable frame. A bed had to be a fortress of silence, capable of supporting the weight of a human life without a single discordant noise that might shatter the fragile state of sleep. They used sophisticated joinery mortise and tenon joints, leather thongs, and woven cords to create a flexing surface that moved with the sleeper. They envisioned a future where the bed was not just a place to lie down, but an engineered sanctuary. This was a systemic pride, the belief that a well-made bed was a tool of health, a piece of preventative medicine that ensured the occupant woke with a clear mind and a strong back. The bedding materials themselves became a vocabulary of status. In the Greek and Roman world, the mattress was a complex layered system. The bottom layer was often a web of leather straps or hemp ropes, providing the suspension that made the bed feel weightless. Above this sat a mattress of wool, and, for the ultralight, a topper of swan's down. They feared the hard surface, viewing it as a sign of poverty or a lack of refinement. To the ancient mind, softness was a hard-won civilizational achievement. They used their beds to display their global reach, using linens from Egypt, purple dyes from Tyre, and ebony from the deep south. The bed was a map of the known world, draped over the resting body of the master. For the common man, the bed remained a more humble, multi-purpose object. In the small houses of the Mediterranean, the bed was often a built-in stone or mud brick bench that served as a seat during the day and a sleeping platform at night. This structural efficiency was a response to the anxiety of space. They did not have the luxury of dedicated rooms. They had the rhythm of the multi-use home. Yet, Even here, they sought to elevate their rest. They would pile their mats high or use wooden blocks to create a slight incline for the head. They understood that height is health, a philosophy that kept them just far enough from the floor to avoid the worst of the night chill. The contrast between the static bed of the city and the folding bed of the campaign highlights the versatility of ancient bedding. The Greeks and Romans developed traveling beds that could be dismantled and carried on a mule, ensuring that the luxury of the raised frame could follow the citizen to the ends of the earth. They feared the unpredictability of the inn, viewing a strange bed as a place of potential disease or bad spirits. By bringing their own portable nest, they maintained their environmental order, even in the most chaotic foreign lands. This was a psychological anchor, the belief that as long as you had your own bed, you were never truly away from home. The beds of the ancient world have long since decayed, but the instinct for the raised nest remains a core part of our biology. The belief that our place of rest should be a temple of quality offers a sense of protective, grounded security. You are not responsible for the social signals of your furniture or the engineering of your comfort. You are only a recipient of the enduring, quiet history of human ingenuity. The image of the strong, woven frame holding you safely above the world acts as your guide. The structure is firm, the height is perfect, and the ground is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In the sprawling villas of the Roman Empire, the bedroom, the cubiculum, was designed as a sensory void, a space specifically engineered to strip away the distractions of the world. Unlike our modern bedrooms, which are often filled with light, electronics, and multiple doors, the Roman cubiculum was a masterpiece of acoustic and visual isolation. This was the anxiety of the open space, the fear that a room with too many windows or too much noise would leave the soul exposed and unable to descend into the deep recovery of sleep. To enter a Roman bedroom was to enter a stone cocoon, a place where the rhythm of the city was replaced by the pulse of the silence. As you breathe in the cool, steady air of your own room, imagine the deliberate darkness of a high-status Roman chamber. The sound was the absolute nothingness of thick, windowless walls, designed to block out the clatter of the night wagons in the street. The air was still and cool, kept at a constant temperature by the massive thermal bulk of the stone or concrete. The Roman elite harbored a secret worry about vulnerability, believing that a window was an invitation for a thief, an assassin, or a malevolent bad air. They preferred a contained environment where the only light came from a single, small oil lamp that was extinguished the moment they climbed into bed. This was the first blackout chamber, a space where the brain was forced to turn inward. The hidden worries of the Roman architect focused on the peril of the echo. They used heavy tapestries, thick floor mosaics, and even vaulted ceilings to dampen the sound of footsteps or voices from the rest of the house. They envisioned a future where the inner life of the master was protected by a shell of architecture. This was a psychological engineering, the belief that true rest is only possible when you are certain that no one can see you and no one can hear you. They used double-layered doors with felt linings to ensure that the privacy of the void was absolute. To the Roman, luxury was not just a soft bed. It was the power to be invisible. The design of the cubiculum also reflected a social hierarchy of sleep. The room was small, often surprisingly so, compared to the vast reception halls of the villa. This compressed space was intentional. It was believed that a smaller room was easier to spiritually guard and more thermally efficient. The hidden worries of the sleeper were managed by the presence of the protector, the cubicularies, or chamber slave, who slept just outside the door. This meant that the master could surrender to sleep entirely, knowing that a loyal ear was listening for any discord in the night. This was a delegated vigilance, a luxury that allowed the Roman mind to achieve a level of alpha-wave relaxation that was rare in the ancient world. The impact of this isolation on their dream life was profound. Without the constant interruptions of modern life, the Roman sleeper experienced vivid, undisturbed cycles. They viewed their cubiculum as a dream incubator, a place where the subconscious could work through the boring but complex problems of the day without the interference of the real world. They feared the fragmented night, believing that a man who was constantly woken was a man who was losing his mind. This led to a culture of high-quality, deep block sleep, where the night was treated as a sacred appointment that could not be interrupted for any reason. The contrast between the open living of the day and the closed living of the night highlights the Roman need for compartmentalization. They used their architecture to separate the selves, the public man of the forum and the private man of the bed. Their fear was not of the dark, but of the leakage of the public world into the private one. They used their stone cocoons as a way to reset the internal clock, ensuring that when they emerged at dawn, they were entirely new. The villas are silent ruins now, but the logic of the quiet chamber remains a fundamental human need. The Roman belief that we must curate our environment offers a sense of protective, structural clarity. You are not responsible for the noise of the street or the eyes of the world. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet void of the evening. The image of the thick walls and the felt-lined door acts as your guide. The world is blocked out, the silence is absolute, and the city is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In the ancient world, the smell of the room was considered just as vital for sleep as the softness of the bed. From the blue lotus of Egypt to the lavender of Rome, the ancients used aromatics as a form of nocturnal chemistry to regulate the nervous system. This was the anxiety of the stale air, a belief that the spirit of the breath had to be purified before it could enter the body during the vulnerability of sleep. They harbored a secret worry that stagnant odors or bad vapors could invite nightmares, cause illness, or even prevent the soul from returning to the body at dawn. To the ancient sleeper, the night had a scent profile that signaled the safety and quality of the environment. As you settle into the calm, weightless expanse of the evening, imagine the olfactory theater of a Greek or Roman bedroom. The sound was the soft hiss of a small incense burner or the gentle crackle of aromatic wood in a brazier. The air was not the sterile, filtered air of a modern HVAC system. It was a living atmosphere filled with the molecules of cedar, pine, and dried herbs. The Greeks used purslane and poppy seeds near the pillow to cool the brain, believing that a hot mind was the primary cause of insomnia. They envisioned a future where the air of the night was a medicated balm for the weary traveler. This was a chemical wisdom, the realization that the sense of smell is the only sense that remains fully awake. During sleep, acting as a direct line to the emotional centers of the brain, the hidden worries of the household focused on air circulation. In a world where oil lamps and charcoal fires were common, the peril of the smoke was a very real physical threat. They used ventilation slats high in the walls and breathable linens to ensure that the freshness of the night could penetrate the room without bringing in the chill of the ground. They feared the heavy air, viewing it as a sign of decay or spiritual congestion. To manage this, they practiced a form of environmental purification, sweeping the floors with scented water and shaking out the bedding in the sun to kill the tiny creatures of the dark. The use of sleep-inducing pillows was a common technological innovation. These were small linen bags filled with hops, rose petals, or dried chamomile, placed directly under the neck or inside the mattress. This targeted aromatherapy ensured that the sleeper was rhythmically bathed in a calming cloud of plant medicine throughout the night. They believed that these scents acted as anchors for the soul, keeping the dreamer in a state of peaceful suspension. They feared the abrupt wake, believing that a scent-filled environment helped the brain soft land back into consciousness at dawn. The scentscape of the ancient night also served a defensive purpose. Strong aromatics, like cedar and wormwood, were used to repel moths, bedbugs, and fleas, turning the bed into a chemically protected zone. They understood that physical comfort was impossible without biological security. This was the boring but essential reality of life before modern pest control. By scenting the nest, they were creating a barrier of cleanliness that allowed the mind to relax. They envisioned a future where the health of the body was maintained by the purity of the air. The contrast between the synthetic sense of today and the natural sense of the past is a reminder of our lost connection to the botanical world. We use artificial lavender in a spray. They use the actual flower in the pillow. Yet, the desire for the calming atmosphere remains unchanged. They understood that the nose is the guardian of the night, a philosophy that made every breath of the dark a restorative act. Their fear was not of the smells themselves, but of a world that had become odorless and sterile, losing the rhythm of the seasonal plant. The gardens and the braziers are cold now, but the wisdom of the scent remains. The ancient belief that we should breathe the peace of the earth offers a sense of protective botanical comfort. You are not responsible for the purification of your environment or the defense against the unseen. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet atmosphere of the evening. The image of the calm, scented air filling the room acts as your guide. The air is pure, the scent is soothing, and the world is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In the ancient world, sleep was rarely a solitary act. It was a communal vigil. Whether in a Greek barracks, a Roman apartment, or an Egyptian village, the act of resting was supported by the sentinel's breath, the audible, rhythmic presence of other human beings. This was the anxiety of the lone sleeper, a deep-seated biological fear that to be unheard was to be unprotected. In our modern world, we strive for total isolation, but to the ancient mind, the sound of the neighbor was the most effective sleep aid ever invented. It was the rhythmic reassurance that the watch was being kept, even if only subconsciously. As you drift further into the weightless.com expanse of the night, consider the acoustic safety of a shared space. The sound was the chorus of the contubernum, the synchronized breathing of 8 men in a single tentor, the soft murmurs of a multi-generational Egyptian family on a roof. These sounds were not distractions. They were biological white noise. They signaled to the ancient brain that the tribe was intact and that the circle of safety was closed. The ancients harbored a secret worry about dead silence, viewing it as a sign that the guards had fled or that nature had gone quiet in the presence of a predator. To sleep in a row of breathing was to be part of a living fortress. The hidden worries of the community focused on the peril of the broken rhythm. If a sleeper's breathing became ragged, or if the snore of the elder suddenly stopped, the entire group would stir. They were interlocked sleepers, their nervous systems tuned to the baseline of the group. They envisioned a future where the survival of the one was dependent on the awareness of the many. This was a primal security, the belief that the night belongs to the pack. They used their boring proximity to create a human climate control, sharing body heat in the winter, and providing a human alarm system in the summer. The impact of this communal rest on the quality of the night was profound. It reduced the cortisol of the individual, allowing for a deeper surrender to the REM cycle. They understood that vulnerability is shared, a philosophy that made the act of closing one's eyes a communal trust. They feared the lonely bed, believing it led to melancholy and night terrors. To the ancient sleeper, the rhythm of the room was the rhythm of the heart, and as long as that rhythm was steady and shared, the night was a place of peace. The transition from communal sleep to individual sleep is one of the greatest shifts in human history. We have gained privacy, but we have lost the sentinel's breath. By imagining the soft chorus of the past, we can find a sense of protective ancestral comfort. We can realize that our fear of the dark is often just a fear of being alone. By tapping into the rhythmic memory of our species, we can find a deeper sense of security in our own beds tonight. The tents and the mud brick rooms are gone, but the need for the presence of the other remains. The belief that we are safe together offers a sense of profound evolutionary peace. You are not responsible for the guarding of the tribe or the monitoring of the group. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet history of the human nest. The image of the synchronized breathing of the camp acts as your guide. The circle is closed, the watch is shared, and the night is hushed by the pack. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. For the ancient soldier, sleep was not a soft retreat into comfort, but a rigid extension of military science. Whether in the desert outposts of the Egyptian Empire, the rugged camps of the Spartan phalanx, or the fortified squares of the Roman legions, rest was a resource of state. This was the anxiety of the vulnerable flank, the constant, low-level dread that the moment of greatest risk, to the soldier, the discipline of the night, was just as important as the discipline of the shield. They understood that an exhausted army was a defeated army, and thus they developed a culture of tactical slumber that was as efficient and boring as a supply ledger, yet as vital as the sword itself. As you settle into the weightless.com expanse of your own bed, imagine the atmosphere of a Spartan camp on the eve of battle. The sound was the rhythmic thud of a spear butt hitting the earth as a sentry shifted his weight, and the low guttering hiss of a pitch torch. The air was cold and filled with the scent of damp wool and oiled bronze. The Spartan did not seek a soft mattress. In fact, the laws of Lycurgus often forbade it. They slept on beds of rushes that they had plucked by hand from the banks of the Eurotas River, believing that the hard surface kept the spirit sharp and the body ready. They harbored a secret worry that comfort was a slow-acting poison that would eventually erode the will of the warrior. The hidden worries of the centurion or the polemarch focused on the peril of the deep sleeper. In a world without radar or thermal imaging, the safety of thousands of men rested entirely on the auditory vigilance of the watch. They used a system of rotating vigils, dividing the night into 4 distinct blocks. This interrupted rhythm meant that a soldier's rest was always partial. They practiced the art of instant wakefulness, the ability to move from the depths of REM sleep to a state of full combat awareness at the single note of a trumpet. They envisioned a future where the Roman peace was maintained by men who could sleep with one eye open, their ears tuned to the specific metallic ring of a climbing hook against a stone wall. The equipment of the night for a soldier was a masterpiece of multifunctional design. His pillow was his loculus, a leather bag that contained his wheat rations, his sharpening stone, and his family's amulets. His blanket was his sagum, a cloak made of heavy, felted wool that was treated with lanolin to make it waterproof. This cloak was more than just a garment. It was his mobile home, his bedding, and his shroud. They feared the wet chill more than the enemy, knowing that a night spent in damp clothes led to the cough that would give away a position or the fever that would deplete a century. To the soldier, dryness was the ultimate luxury, a boring but essential goal of every campsite. The architecture of the camp provided the psychological safety necessary for this hard rest. The Roman camp, in particular, was a spatial anchor. Every tent, every street, and every gate was in the exact same place in every camp from Britain to Baghdad. A soldier could be blindfolded and still find his way to his tent. This predictability reduced the cognitive load on the tired mind, allowing the soldier to shut down his peripheral awareness because he knew the geometry of the night was secure. This was a systemic security, the belief that order is the parent of sleep. They used their boring routines of digging trenches and raising ramparts to create a temporary villa in the heart of the wilderness. The contrast between the hard rest of the soldier and the soft sleep of the civilian was a source of immense pride for the ancient warrior. They viewed their ability to find rest in the mud as a mark of their superiority. Yet, even in this hardness, there was a profound sense of communal peace. The sound of 8 men breathing in a leather tentha, contubernium, was a human shield of sound. They understood that trust is the best pillow, a philosophy that made the act of closing one's eyes a vow of brotherhood. Their fear was not of the hard ground, but of the broken line, the moment when the trust failed and the night became an enemy. The legions have long since vanished into the dust of history, but the discipline of the iron rest remains a testament to human resilience. The ancient belief that we can find peace in the structure offers a sense of protective, grounded clarity. You are not responsible for the safety of the camp or the standing of the watch. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet order of the evening. The image of the fortified square, standing firm against the dark axe as your guide. The ramparts are high, the watch is set, and the frontier is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In the ancient world, to travel was to deliberately forfeit the security of the home and enter a state of perpetual nocturnal vulnerability. Whether a merchant on the Silk Road, a pilgrim traveling to the oracle at Delphi, or a Roman official moving along the Appian Way, the traveler's rest was a high-stakes negotiation with the unknown. This was the anxiety of the strange bed, a deep-seated fear that the rhythm of the journey was inherently chaotic. They harbored a secret worry that the inns were not sanctuaries. but dens of thieves where the sleep of the guest was a commodity to be exploited. To travel was to carry your privacy in a small bundle and hope that the morning would find it intact. As you breathe in the cool, steady air of the evening, imagine the atmosphere of a roadside inn near Ephesus. The sound was the shuffling of pack animals in the courtyard and the low, muffled voices of strangers in the next stall. The air was thick with the smell of old straw, cooking fires, and dust. The traveler did not expect a private room. They expected a space on the floor or a hard wooden bench. They used their own traveling kit, a small roll of linen and a leather neckroll, to create a familiar nest in an unfamiliar place. They feared the bed of the inn, viewing it as a reservoir of the previous guests' luck and their pests. The hidden worries of the traveler focused on the peril of the unlocked door. In many ancient inns, privacy was a foreign concept. Rooms were often shared with 5 or 6 strangers, and doors were nothing more than heavy wool curtains. To manage this, the traveler practiced vigilant sleep. They would sleep with their money pouch tied around their waist and their walking staff or dagger tucked firmly under their arm. They envisioned a future where the safety of the road was guaranteed by the state. But until then, they relied on personal defense. This was the peril of the stranger, the fear that the man snoring 2 feet away was not a fellow traveler, but a predator of the dark. The architecture of the journey included the caravanserai, the massive, fortified hotels of the East. These were designed as inverted fortresses, with all the rooms facing inward toward a central, guarded courtyard. This design provided a collective security, where the noise of the animals acted as a living alarm system. They understood that safety is found in numbers, a philosophy that made the solitary traveler a rare and doomed figure. They used their boring rituals of checking the gates and tethering the camels as a way to anchor the night in an environment that was constantly shifting. For the pilgrim, sleep was a ritualized transition. Those traveling to sacred sites often practiced incubation along the way, sleeping in groves or near holy springs to seek the protection of the local spirits. They believed that the land itself had a memory, and that by sleeping on the earth, they were downloading the power of the place. Their hidden worries focused on the peril of the unholy ground, the fear that they might inadvertently rest in a place where dark things had happened, inviting bad dreams or spiritual sickness. They used salt or iron circles around their mats as a symbolic wall against the unseen. The contrast between the static peace of the home and the fluid fear of the road highlights the ancient value of hospitality. The law of the guest. Xenia in Greece was a sacred contract designed to mitigate the anxiety of the way. An innkeeper who harmed a guest was not just a criminal, he was an enemy of the gods. This religious protection was the only thing that allowed the ancient world to move. Their fear was not of the distance, but of the dishonesty that could occur when the sun went down. The inns are ruins now, and the roads have been paved over 1,000 times, but the instinct of the traveler remains. The ancient belief that we are vulnerable when we wander offers a sense of protective, ancestral clarity. You are not responsible for the security of your journey or the intentions of the stranger. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet sanctuary of your own permanent home. The image of the closed gate and the trusted fire acts as your guide. The road is far, the journey is paused, and the way is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. To truly understand the peril of the urban night, one must look at Rome in the 2nd century CE. This was the first vertical city, a place where the density of life created a density of noise that challenged the very limits of human endurance. For the Roman citizen, the night was not a time of quiet reflection, but a time of industrial chaos. This was the anxiety of the crowded mind, the fear that the city was a living entity that consumed the silence of its inhabitants. To sleep in the city was to participate in a collective struggle for a moment of peace in a world that was perpetually loud and perpetually moving. As you settle into the steady, unmoving calm of the evening, imagine the atmosphere of the Vicus Tuscus at midnight. The sound was the thunder of the wheels, the iron-rimmed freight wagons that were legally barred from the city during the day. Because Rome had no underground and no bypass, every piece of grain, every block of marble, and every barrel of wine moved through the narrow streets at night. The echo off the high stone walls of the insulate created a megaphone effect, turning a single cart into a roar of thunder. The air was thick with the smell of exhausted oil lamps and hot stone. The Roman harbored a secret worry that the vibration of the wagons would eventually shake the foundations of the city itself. The hidden worries of the urban dweller focused on the peril of the night watch, the vigils. These were the city's firefighters and police, but they were often viewed with a mixture of relief and dread. They patrolled the streets with leather buckets and heavy axes, searching for the flicker of a flame that could destroy an entire district in an hour. They envisioned a future where the city of wood was entirely replaced by a city of marble. But until then, every crackle of wood in the night was a potential death sentence. This was the peril of the spark, the fear that sleep was a trap from which there was no escape once the red wind of a fire began to blow. The architecture of the urban bed reflected this anxiety of the environment. Many Romans slept in alcoves, tiny recesses in the wall of the main room that provided a psychological shell against the chaos of the apartment. They used heavy wool blankets, not just for warmth, but for sound dampening, wrapping their heads in a cocoon of fabric to create a private silence. They understood that peace is an internal construction, a philosophy that allowed them to find rest in the storm. They feared the sudden quiet, viewing it as a sign of unnatural stillness or approaching disaster. To the Roman a healthy city was a loud city, and they learned to tune out the thunder, to find the pulse of the sleep. For the wealthy, the urban night was managed by subterranean design. Many elite townhouses featured cryptoporticus, underground corridors, and rooms that were thermally and acoustically insulated by the earth itself. By sleeping below the level of the street, they effectively deleted the city from their consciousness. This was a luxury of the void, the belief that true power is the ability to silence the world. Their hidden worries focused on the peril of the social obligation, the fear that they would be woken by a client seeking a favor at the crack of dawn. They used thick curtains and loyal slaves to guard the transition from the private night to the public day. The contrast between the roaring streets and the silent altar highlights the Roman need for sacred space. Every Roman home, no matter how small, had a lararium, a small shrine to the household gods. They believed that the Lares and Pinides kept a spiritual watch over the sleepers, turning the vulnerable night into a divine protection. Their fear was not of the noise, but of the godlessness that occurred when the rituals of the home were forgotten. They used their boring prayers and offerings as a way to sanctify the night, turning the chaos of the city into a structured peace. The wagons have stopped, and the insulae have crumbled into dust, but the anxiety of the urban sleeper remains a core part of our modern lives. The Roman belief that we must build our own silence offers a sense of protective architectural comfort. You are not responsible for the noise of the world or the vibration of the foundations. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet sanctuary of your own internal villa. The image of the thick stone walls and the household gods acts as your guide. The city is loud, but the home is peaceful, and the empire is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In the ancient world, how a person slept was considered a direct reflection of their character. There was an unwritten rule that rest was not just a biological need, but a moral practice. This was the anxiety of the unguarded self, the belief that the way you surrendered to the night revealed your true nature, stripped of the masks of the day. To the Roman, the Greek, and the Egyptian, a man who tossed and turned was a man with a troubled conscience, while the man who slept the sleep of the just was a man in harmony with the divine. To sleep virtuously was to perform a boring but vital act of spiritual hygiene as you drift further into the calm, weightless expanse of the night. Consider the ethic of the pillow. The sound was the steady, deep breathing of a person who has done their duty and paid their debts. The Greeks harbored a secret worry that luxury in sleep would lead to softness in action. They feared the featherbed, viewing it as a corruption of the spirit. They believed in the virtue of the moderate surface, a bed that was comfortable enough to rest, but hard enough to remember one's mortality. They envisioned a future where the citizens of the Republic were defined by their restraint even in the hours of the night. The hidden worries of the philosopher focused on the peril of the dream self. They believed that the mind is a mirror, and that if the day was filled with vice, the night would be filled with chaos. To manage this, they practiced evening review, a systematic mental cleaning of the day's events before closing their eyes. They would ask themselves, what have I done wrong? What have I done right? What have I left undone? This nocturnal audit was designed to clear the channels of the soul, ensuring that the sleep of the night was a clean slate. They feared the unexamined life, believing it led to a polluted dream world. For the Roman, the unwritten rule was tied to the dignity of the paterfamilias. The head of the household was expected to be the last to sleep and the first to wake, maintaining a rhythmic vigilance over his family. His sleep was a gravity point for the home, a source of stability and order. They feared the indulgent rest, viewing a man who slept past the sun as a man who had lost the mandate of the gods. To the Roman, early rising was not just a habit, it was a demonstration of authority. They used their boring discipline of the dawn as a way to reassert the self over the passivity of the night. This virtue of the sleeper also extended to the treatment of the weary. The law of hospitality ensured that the stranger's rest was sacred. They believed that God comes to us in the form of the traveler, and that to deny a man a safe bed was a moral failure of the highest order. This created a culture of the shared night, where the protection of the weak was a communal duty. They envisioned a world where the quality of the sleep was a measure of the health of the society. This was a systemic morality, the belief that a peaceful night is a sign of a peaceful state. The contrast between the private rest of today and the public virtue of the past is a reminder of our lost social dimensions of sleep. We view sleep as a personal choice. They viewed it as a civic duty. Yet the desire for a clear conscience remains the most powerful sleep aid in history. They understood that guilt is the sharpest thorn in the pillow, a philosophy that turned every moral act of the day into a restorative act for the night. Their fear was not of the dark, but of the darkness within. The scrolls of the philosophers have faded, and the rules of the elders are no longer taught, but the wisdom of the virtuous sleep remains. The ancient belief that peace of mind is the best bedding offers a sense of protective, spiritual clarity, or the auditing of your character, or the auditing of your soul. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet history of the sleep of the just, the image of the sleep of the just, the image of the steady, rhythmic breath of the virtuous man acts as your guide. The conscience is clear, and the soul is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. To understand the rest of our ancestors, we must immerse ourselves in the symphony of the ancient night, a complex, sonic landscape that has been entirely erased by the industrial age. In the modern era, we strive for a sterile silence, a vacuum of sound that we believe is the only path to deep slumber. However, the inhabitants of the ancient world lived in a state of acoustic naturalism. Their nights were not silent. They were filled with a specific, layered texture of sounds that acted as a constant, subconscious communication from the environment. This was the anxiety of the void, a fear that absolute silence was unnatural, a sign that the living world had stopped breathing. To the ancient ear, the night was a living, breathing entity, and its voice was the primary guardian of the sleeper's peace. As you settle into the steady, unmoving calm of the evening, imagine the auditory tapestry of a village in the Peloponnese. The sound was not the hum of a refrigerator or the drone of traffic, but the micro-rhythms of the natural world. There was the persistent, low-frequency thrum of cicadas, the clinking of goat bells from a distant hillside, and the shushing of the wind through dry olive leaves. These were predictable sounds, a category of noise that the human brain evolved to interpret as safety. The ancient sleeper harbored a secret worry about irregular noise, the sharp snap of a dry branch, the sudden silence of the insects, or the metallic tink of a shifting blade. These were the discordant notes that would trigger an immediate spike in awareness, while the constant symphony of nature acted as a lullaby. The hidden worries of the community focused on the peril of the unseen threat. In a world without streetlights, the ears became the primary scouts of the night. This led to a state of distributed vigilance, where the entire village acted as a single, multi-headed listener. They envisioned a future where the protection of the wall was supplemented by the protection of the ear. This was a sensory wisdom, the realization that sound travels further and more clearly in the cool, dense air of the night. They used their boring background noises, the crackle of the hearth, the rhythmic breathing of family members to create an acoustic shield, as long as the sounds of the home remained steady. The mind of the sleeper could descend into the deepest levels of recovery. The sound of water was perhaps the most prized nocturnal luxury in the ancient world. From the irrigation channels of the Nile to the elaborate fountains of a Roman peristyle, the rhythm of flowing water was the ultimate sleep tech of the era. The wealthy specifically designed their bedrooms near water features to mask the unpredictability of the city or the wilderness. They understood that the white noise of water has a profound effect on the human parasympathetic nervous system, slowing the heart rate and deepening the breath. They feared the dry night, viewing the absence of water as a sign of environmental stress or spiritual drought. To the Roman aristocrat, the song of the fountain was the sound of civilized rest. The transition from the natural symphony to the industrial drone is the story of how we lost our acoustic connection to the earth. The ancients used the voice of the night to track the passage of time. They knew the sound of the second watch by the specific shift in the wind or the arrival of a certain nocturnal bird. This was a temporal harmony that allowed them to wake at dawn feeling aligned with the world. They feared the clock time that would eventually replace this nature time, believing that a man should rise when the world rises, not when a machine dictates. The contrast between the rich soundscape of the past and the sterile silence of the present highlights our sensory deprivation. We use noise-canceling headphones to find peace. They used the chorus of the world to find security. Yet, the desire for the steady background remains a core part of our biology. They understood that silence is the absence of life, but peace is the presence of harmony, a philosophy that turned the nocturnal symphony into a restorative embrace. Their fear was not of the noise, but of the loss of the song. The ancient nights have faded, and the voices of the wilderness have retreated. But the instinct for the acoustic anchor remains. The ancient belief that we are safe in the sound offers a sense of protective, grounded comfort. You are not responsible for monitoring the environment or interpreting the whispers of the night. You are only a listener to the enduring, quiet history of the world's first lullaby. The image of the softly flowing fountain and the distant wind acts as your guide. The world is in harmony, the symphony is steady, and the chaos is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. In the vast, structured lands of the Han Dynasty, sleep was viewed as a delicate negotiation between the microcosm of the body and the macrocosm of the universe. For the ancient Chinese, the night was governed by the transition from Yang, the active, sun-driven energy, to Yin, the passive, moon-driven stillness. This was the anxiety of the internal flow, a deep-seated belief that health was not merely the absence of disease, but the perfect circulation of qi, or life force. To sleep was to enter a state of internal cultivation, where the body's organs performed a silent, hidden work of purification. They harbored a secret worry that a blocked path or a turbulent mind would cause the qi to stagnate, leading to physical illness and a fractured spirit. As you settle into the weightless.com expanse of your own evening, imagine the atmosphere of a home in Chang'an 2,000 years ago. The sound was the soft, persistent clack of a bamboo night watchman's rattle and the gentle rustle of silk hangings in the breeze. The air was cool and filled with the scent of sandalwood and dried mugwort, used to warm the channels and repel the malevolent winds of the night. The sleeper did not lie on a soft, sinking surface. Instead, they favored the kang, a raised platform made of brick or clay that was connected to the home's stove. This geothermal bed provided a steady, low-level warmth that mirrored the internal fire of the body, ensuring that the yin of the night did not overwhelm the yang of the person. The hidden worries of the Chinese scholar focused on the peril of the incorrect position. Their medical texts, such as the Huangdi Nei Xin, provided specific instructions on how to lie to sleep like a bow. On one side, with knees slightly bent, was believed to protect the heart and allow the gallbladder to drain away the bitterness of the day. They envisioned a future where the virtuous man was recognized by the stillness of his sleep. They feared the agitated rest, viewing it as a sign of a disharmonious heart. This was a holistic discipline, the belief that even the way you tucked your hands or tilted your head was an act of preventative medicine. They used ceramic or lacquered wood pillows, often hollow, to allow for the circulation of cool air, believing that a cool head and warm feet were the two pillars of longevity. The role of the nocturnal environment extended to the art of placement or early feng shui. The bed was never placed directly in line with a door or under a heavy beam, as these were seen as arrows of energy that would pierce the sleeper's peace. This spatial security provided a psychological shield against the unseen forces of the dark. They harbored a secret worry about vulnerable transitions, believing that the moments before sleep and the moments after waking were when the soul was most susceptible to external pathogens. To manage this, they practiced internal alchemy, breathing exercises designed to sink the breath into the abdomen, creating a heavy, grounded peace before the eyes were closed. For the common farmer, sleep was a rhythm of the soil. Their rest was dictated by the solar terms of the agricultural calendar. In the winter, they retired early and rose late, conserving their energy like the seeds beneath the frost. In the summer, they followed the short night, rising with the first light of the crowing cock. This seasonal synchronization meant that their bodies were never at war with the world around them. They feared the artificial schedule, believing that to fight against the natural timing of the earth was to invite a premature aging of the spirit. Their sleep was a boring but powerful act of compliance with the way the Tao. The contrast between the gilded silk of the palace and the reed mat of the village was bridged by a shared belief in the sacredness of the dream. They believed the Hun, the ethereal soul, traveled during the night, visiting ancestors or wandering through the celestial realms. This made the bedroom a launchpad for the spirit. Their fear was not of the shadows, but of a dreamless, heavy sleep that indicated the soul was trapped or sluggish. They used their boring evening tea rituals, drinking infusions of goji berries or chrysanthemum as a way to lighten the spirit for its nocturnal journey. The dynasties have passed into legend, and the bamboo rattles have gone silent, but the wisdom of the internal flow remains. The ancient Chinese belief that we should sleep in harmony with the cosmos offers a sense of protective, energetic clarity. You are not responsible for the circulation of your qi or the alignment of your room. You are only a dweller within the enduring, quiet history of the Tao of rest. The image of the warm Kong and the bow-like posture acts as your guide. The channels are open, the energy is balanced, and the great empire is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room. We have traveled from the gilded lion beds of the pharaohs to the iron-disciplined camps of the Romans, from the philosophical pillows of Greece to the geothermal warmth of the Han dynasty. As we reach the horizon of the soul, we must consider what all these ancient civilizations knew that we have forgotten, that sleep is the great finality of every day, a rehearsal for the ultimate surrender we all must eventually face. For the ancients, the act of waking was not a boring routine, but a triumph of the self over the void. They viewed the morning as a daily rebirth, a miracle that was greeted with gratitude, ritual, and a renewed sense of purpose. This existential perspective turned the night into a bridge rather than a barrier. As you settle into the weightless, calm expanse of the evening, imagine the first gray light hitting the stones of a dozen different civilizations at once. The sound was the first bird song of the Nile, the clatter of a Roman gate, and the soft chant of a Chinese scholar. The air was crisp and full of the potential of the unwritten day. The ancients harbored a secret worry about the final sleep, viewing every night as a practice for the end of life. They believed that if one could master the art of the night, the art of letting go, of trusting the environment, and of purifying the mind, one could master the art of the end. They envisioned a future where the soul's horizon was not a cliff, but a steady transition into a greater light. The hidden worries of the ancestors focused on the peril of the unremembered life. They used their pre-dawn reflections to anchor their legacy, ensuring that the lessons of the night were carried into the actions of the day. They believed in the continuity of the self, a philosophy that saw sleep as the connective tissue between the chapters of a human life. They feared the fragmented existence, where the night was just a blank space that severed the person you were yesterday from the person you are today. To the ancient mind, sleep was the weaver of the story, the force that made a life a whole cloth rather than a collection of rags. The ancient wisdom we have unearthed across these 23 sections offers a roadmap for our own pursuit of the horizon. They taught us that rest is not a waste of time, but a cultivation of the soul. They showed us that the environment we build around our beds, the light, the scent, the sound, and the structure, is a sacred architecture that protects our most vulnerable selves. They feared the loss of the ritual, believing that without a disciplined approach to the night, the day would inevitably collapse into chaos. By honoring the rhythms of the past, we reclaim our place in the natural order of the world. As we conclude this journey, take a moment to appreciate the resilience of the human sleeper. We are the descendants of those who found deep, restorative rest in the shadow of pyramids and on the floors of crowded apartments. We carry their circadian memory in our very cells. Their anxieties were the same as ours: the need for safety, the desire for comfort, and the search for meaning in the dark. By unearthing their habits, we find that we are never truly alone in our rest. We are part of a steady, unhurried chain of sleepers that stretches back to the first fires of humanity. The horizon of the soul is a place of peace, where the worries of the era finally dissolve into the eternity of the night. The belief that every night is a preparation and every morning is a gift offers a sense of profound protective gravity. You are not responsible for the legacy of the past or the uncertainty of the future. You are only a traveler toward your own horizon, guided by the wisdom of the ages. The image of the rising sun and the reborn soul acts as your guide. The journey is complete, the night is honored, and the world is hushed by the night. You are secure in the steady, unhurried peace of your own rest, where the only thing that matters is the deep stillness of the room.